Welcome along to a darker than usual but interesting development that happened. On this day, 3rd of January 1934, Alcatraz officially became a federal prison. We go back in time to visit a prison so notorious it was deemed the end of the line. Welcome to Alcatraz. Nestled in the heart of San Francisco Bay, this island has a history as turbulent as the waters that surround it. Before it became the home of America's most wanted, Alcatraz served as a lighthouse, a military fortification, and a military prison. But its reputation truly took a sinister turn in the early 30s. In an era marked by organized crime and lawless bandits, the government decided it needed a prison that was escape-proof. A place where the most dangerous criminals in the country could be contained. The solution? Alcatraz. Its isolated location and the frigid, swift currents of the surrounding waters made it the perfect fortress for this purpose. And thus, on January 3, 1934, Alcatraz officially became the last stop for America's most hardened criminals. Alcatraz wasn't for your everyday lawbreaker, it was reserved for the worst of the worst. The Rock, as Alcatraz was often called, was home to some of the most notorious criminals in American history. Take Al Capone, for instance, one of the most infamous gangsters of the Prohibition era. Known as Scarface, Capone was a ruthless businessman who ruled Chicago with an iron fist. He was responsible for countless acts of violence, including the infamous St. Valentine's Day massacre. But it wasn't his violent crimes that landed him in Alcatraz, no, it was tax evasion. Even the most notorious gangster couldn't escape Uncle Sam. Then there was Robert Stroud, better known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. Despite his nickname, Stroud wasn't allowed to keep birds in Alcatraz. His fame as the Birdman came from his time at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, where he raised and sold canaries. Stroud was a convicted murderer who spent over 50 years in solitary confinement. He was transferred to Alcatraz because of his violent behavior and disregard for prison rules. And who could forget George Machine Gun Kelly? This infamous criminal was known for his involvement in kidnapping and other organized crime activities during the Prohibition era. His nickname came from his weapon of choice, a Thompson submachine gun. Kelly was one of the first high-profile inmates to be sent to Alcatraz. His wife, Catherine, was also involved in his criminal activities and was the one who coined his infamous nickname. These men, and many others like them, were sent to Alcatraz because they were considered too dangerous or disruptive for other prisons. Alcatraz was designed to be the most secure prison in America, a place where the most dangerous criminals could be kept under lock and key. For these men, Alcatraz wasn't just a prison, it was a fortress of solitude meant to isolate them from the rest of the world. Life on the Rock was far from a walk in the park. Alcatraz was known for its regimented daily routine and strict discipline. Every day was meticulously planned and followed a rigid schedule. It was a life of monotonous repetition, where each day mirrored the one before. The day would begin at the break of dawn, with a wake-up call that echoed through the cold stone walls. A quick breakfast followed, eaten in silence under the watchful eyes of the guards. This was not a place for leisurely meals or idle chatter. Every minute was accounted for, every action monitored. After breakfast, it was time for work. Every inmate had a job. Some worked in the laundry, others in the kitchen or the workshops. They made everything from gloves to furniture. This work instilled a sense of responsibility and routine, but it was also a form of control. There were strict quotas to meet, and failing to do so could lead to severe punishment. The isolation was another defining feature of life in Alcatraz. Inmates were housed in single cells, each measuring just 5 by 9 feet. The cells were stark, with a bed, a desk, and a toilet. There were no comforts, no personal belongings. The prisoners were alone with their thoughts, their regrets, and the relentless ticking of the clock. The harsh conditions extended beyond the physical environment. The rules were strict and the punishments severe. Even minor infractions could lead to solitary confinement, a punishment feared by all. The solitary confinement cells, known as the Hole, were dark, cold, and devoid of any human contact. Days turned into nights and nights into days in this sensory-deprived abyss. Despite the harsh conditions, there were also moments of relative calm. Inmates were allowed a few hours of recreation time in the yard, where they could play chess or cards. These moments of respite were few and far between, but they offered a brief escape from the reality of prison life. In Alcatraz, every inmate had a job, a place, and a routine. There was no room for deviation. This was life on the inside, a life of strict discipline, isolation, and harsh conditions. Alcatraz was thought to be escape-proof, but that didn't stop inmates from trying. Indeed, The chilling waters of the San Francisco Bay, coupled with the prison's state-of-the-art security measures, made escape seem like an impossible dream. Despite this, some of the most daring and ingenious attempts in history happened right here, in the heart of Alcatraz. Let's start with the Battle of Alcatraz. In May of 1946, 6 inmates led by the notorious Bernard Coy planned a violent breakout. They managed to overpower the guards and seize control of the cell house. For 2 days they held the prison hostage, sparking a battle that claimed the lives of 3 inmates and 2 guards. Eventually, the U.S. Marines were called in to quell the rebellion, marking one of the bloodiest episodes in Alcatraz's history. Yet the most famous of all escape attempts was probably that of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, in June of 1962. These men were not content with the confines of their cells. They spent months meticulously chiseling away at the vent openings in their cells, using crude tools fashioned from spoons and discarded materials. At night, they would cover the holes with cardboard and paint, ingeniously disguised to look like the surrounding wall. Once they had made their way through the vents, they climbed up a network of pipes to the top of the cell block, where they had secretly been building a raft out of raincoats. On the fateful night of their escape, they left behind dummy heads in their beds, crafted from a mix of soap, toilet paper, and real hair from the prison barbershop. They then slipped out into the night, launching their makeshift raft into the treacherous waters of the bay. Whether they made it to freedom or met a watery grave remains a mystery to this day. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no conclusive evidence has ever been found. This enduring mystery continues to captivate the world, a testament to the desperate lengths people will go to in their quest for freedom. Even the toughest prison has its breaking point. Alcatraz, a fortress in the midst of San Francisco Bay, was no exception. By the early 60s, the walls that once echoed with the clamor of infamous criminals like Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly began to crumble. The prison's remote location on the island, while initially seen as an advantage, eventually contributed to its downfall. The cost of operations was astronomical, with the government spending 3 times more to house a prisoner at Alcatraz than at other federal prisons. The salt air gnawed at the buildings, causing the facilities to deteriorate at an alarming rate. After 29 years, the doors of Alcatraz closed for the last time on March 21, 1963. In the end, Alcatraz was more than a prison. It was a symbol of the American justice system's relentless pursuit to keep the worst of the worst off the streets. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this rather dark story and the federal fact that happened on this day, then there will be another one at the same time tomorrow. Please like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and we'll see you then. Take care.